The beast fell into the dark, mist-filled water. The ship was then alone in the mist. The survivors, breathing heavily, rubbed blood from their faces and started to assess the ship. The battle had been glorious, but now the dead needed to be given a proper burial. The treasures needed to be saved, and the ship must be sailed to a shore. And there are dark sounds in the mist. To the oars. There is no time to play. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the No Time to Play Today podcast, a podcast about board games, video games, card games, and all other matter of things that we don't have time for. I am one of your hosts, Scott, and I am joined by Matt.
Hey.
Shane.
Good evening.
And the Len.
Hello.
And unfortunately, Tony will not be joining us because unlike our intro, he is not in like a moist area, but instead is in arid deserts and has been burnt to a crisp, as I understand it.
Well, I don't know. Like, it would be, you'd be burnt to a crisp, and it would still. There's moisture in the air still, which makes you uncomfortable as well.
Oh, the worst of hots.
Yeah, it's like I've been. The sun has beaten down on me, and now I am uncomfortable because I am on fire, and it's kind of moist, but not moist enough to put out this fire.
So it's a jungle fire.
It's a jungle fire. It's the worst.
Well, while we consider that jungle fire, Matt, where could people find our wonderful previous archive of content or archive of previous content and send us feedback?
Well, Scott, they could go down to or go over to or click on the little browser thing and go to notimetoplaytoday.com. And they can email us at notimetoplaytoday@gmail.com where they can send feedback and questions and stuff. And one day we're going to get somebody, and it's going to be the best day of my life. And then also you could go to YouTube at youtube.com/notimetoplaytoday where we just kind of break out our podcasts into video form so you can watch us there, even though it's just... it's just our picture and stuff there, but it's mostly an audio stuff. Just
for now.
In video storm. For now, except for like one episode has some cool stuff and the E3 special has some cool stuff in it. So those are definitely ones to watch. And you could also go to iTunes. If you search for No Time to Play Today on iTunes, you can go there and you can also leave a review there for us, which is really cool because then it will make it easier for other people to find us as well.
All right, thank you, Matt. I feel there was a lament in the middle of that, but thank you for that.
No, it's all right. To break the fourth wall or the see the behind the curtain is that editing the podcast is a little beyond me right now.
That's all right.
Timing wise, not skill wise.
Don't worry, glory is before you, as they say.
Oh,
so
yes.
Today's theme is epic, and in light of the intro, we were talking about epic and glorious stuff, and so we have the great battle that happened on that ship, and we have 3 Vikings. So the first Viking we're going to talk about is a big Viking that waved his axe in the air, and that is to recap the big event, which was our big board game weekend that we just passed.
Yeah, just a mere few days ago.
It was like it was yesterday.
But only a couple days earlier than that.
All right, so I don't know how you guys want to start, but I don't know if you want to start with like a particular moment, or would you just like to talk specific, like sort of generally about the event itself?
Well, it was a great event. It was good to have it was a good turnout too. We had quite a bit of people there, so we could play the games that. A lot of the the games that have more players to it that need more players for a good time. Those ones are always hard because it's hard to get everyone in on it. But we had I think 9 people.
That's correct.
9 people, yeah.
Which is quite a good turnout.
Yeah, no, I thought it worked pretty well. And the fact that we were willing to break up into different groups so we could play, because a lot of games only have a 4 or 5 player count. So the fact that we could have tables of 4 or 5, and then even like two player games being played at various parts of the weekend was quite good. I guess I will start. Well, why don't we do highlights? So Matt, do you want to do your highlights?
Yeah, well, I think we're all going to talk about the same highlights, so we could probably save that to the end. I'm assuming everyone kind of had really enjoyed Deception. But I will not talk about Deception because we'll probably talk that later. I will talk about. I'm just looking through my list of games right now.
Matt, you know you want to talk about the epic game of Runebound.
Yeah, I was looking at
I-
Runebound. I'm like, I hope we just don't talk as long as we played it.
I think it's funny because you talked about, we're going to have similar experiences, but I would argue that Lenny and I had a completely different experience than you because you guys played 2 epic games on each day. The one day you played Runebound, and then the other day you played the Lord of the Rings, the card game.
That's true. Yeah,
And and Lenny and I both got a pile of games or whatever we were doing in while that was happening. So I don't know if you want to do do you want me to do mine, or do you want to go through?
No, we'll talk. We'll talk about Runebound. What is it, Shane? 3rd edition?
Yes, 3rd edition.
Yeah, and I know I've played.
Which means it's 3 times as long as 1st edition.
No, it's
No.
Well, it might have been. I don't know. I remember playing 2nd edition a long time ago, but I can't really remember too much from it, other than I did play it. But 3rd edition, it did seem good, and once we learned the rules, the game was going quicker. But it is a marathon of a game. Like, I don't know, like what was it? 6 hours I think we played.
Yeah, give or take an hour.
To say it generously.
Let's put it. It was at least 6 hours.
I thought it was. I really liked it. I think it's a game that I would probably like to own. I'll probably never play it because.
It's a hard sell, right? Like,
yeah.
Especially,
I think I'd like to own it.
I think if we played like. People were saying, I can't remember, I don't know if it was you, Shane, but people were saying in there that it's easier to play with just 3 people.
I would think it would be a quicker play with 2 to 3 people. And also, after playing it once, you have a good idea of sort of what you might need to do to sort of get to the end a bit more quickly next time.
Yeah, that's true. Like you can focus more, because I was kind of like, I was just going around. I'm like, okay, I'll do a quest here, I'll do a quest there, and it wasn't until the second half of the game it's like, oh no, I got to do this, this, and this.
Yeah, and then once you knew what you needed to do, you had a pretty good idea of exactly, what you need to do each turn, where you were headed, and that seemed to, like, the second half definitely, I think, went more quickly than the first half. Like, the first half took us a long time.
Yeah.
Because we were trying to learn the rules, trying to figure out exactly sort of what it was we wanted to do.
To take a step back for our listeners who don't send us emails, but are probably thinking about it, Runebound is essentially a dungeon crawler, but not in a dungeon. Like, it's a map.
No, it's I would call it more a almost open world RPG
in
board game form.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's crazy because it's very much like there's different like places where you explore, and each place will give you a quest or a combat or like a random battle or like a social event.
I guess I meant dungeon crawl in the more abstract sense that, like, there are a series of challenges and you have to get to them. Whereas in a dungeon crawl, it's like you go to a door, the door opens, you go to the next one, et cetera, et cetera. The more of an open dungeon crawl is in that you can go around, but you still are essentially it's an encounter driven game. Is that fair?
Yeah, like what do you mean, like a counter? Like there's a certain set amount of time, and then you.
Well, no, it's just that you have, like, it's not like open world is and you have like conversations and stuff. It's more of a step back, almost like a video game one, where you have like a series of encounters that you have to face, and that gives you experience, or you buy items. Like, it's more.
Well, that's exactly what it is, essentially. Because
Yeah.
you can go, like, once you get some towns and get some money and stuff like that, you go to towns and there's items there and stuff that will increase your abilities and stuff, and that is what pretty much you need in order to defeat the final boss at the end.
Yeah, and then to Shane, I guess you might be the best to speed. What would you say is the most significant, or the top 3 most significant changes from 2nd edition to 3rd edition?
The first one is how combat is performed. So in 2nd edition, you had, in each round of combat, you had 3 distinct stages. You had ranged, melee, and magic, and they went in that order every round. And each character and each enemy that you faced would have sort of a value for each of those three disciplines, I guess you could say. So a user would have the characters would have a mind value, a body value, and a spirit value, and those would be added to a roll of a dice. So you'd roll 2d10 and add your relevant dice for each section of combat, and that would go against the target number that each villain had in each section of combat. And then depending on whether the character exceeded the villain's number, the character could either possibly do damage or would have no damage dealt upon them, or the villain could damage the character. In third edition, each side, so the character and the villain, have a certain number of what are called combat tokens, and each token has obviously two sides. They're like a coin, and you cast them, so you sort of shake them up and then chuck them on the table, and whichever side they fall on, each side will have a different icon, which will depict either one of a number of different possibilities. So you could have an attack icon, you could have a defense icon, you could have a surge icon, or you could have nothing, or an agility.
It disappeared.
Well, nothing just means that it's a miss.
No
basically.
action. Yeah, I missed.
Oh, okay. Now,
It's
how
sort of
did
like a
how
miss.
did you guys find out from a tactile? Like, did you find the runes felt more interesting than, say, casting dice?
Now, well, I can't really talk too much because I can't remember second edition, but it seemed very cool. I really liked it, actually, especially as time goes on, because like once you get a sword, the sword is a token. So it's like, I got another weapon, so I grabbed the token from that and put it into my pile. So instead of casting 3 tokens, I casted 4 tokens, and it gives you different things.
And then you got a suit of armor, and it gives you another set of token that's more defense oriented.
Yeah.
So you get the sword, and it's more extra, basically extra attacks. And then the armor is typically extra defense. Although in Marty's case, he got spiked armor. So on one side it was 2 defense, and on the other side it was an extra attack because of the spikies on the armor.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know why I found that easily. The spiky, due to the spiky. But anyway, yes, I understand.
Spiky.
It's
I'm
interesting.
looking for the spiky armor,
So-
please.
So is there an element of like, does it make the equipment seem more interesting in the sense that when you buy the equipment, you're like, oh, I'm getting a new token. And
Yes.
you get
Yes.
Yeah, it was big time that for me.
and did the token, how am I going to say this? Can you look at the token before you buy?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
And
I was
on-
looking all up on that token.
Yeah, and on the card that represents the item that you buy, it shows you what the 2 sides of the token that it comes with have. So there was one piece of equipment that I really wanted because it had a surge on one side and a magic attack on another, but then Marty was able to snag it before I was able to obtain the sufficient funds to go get it.
So it's semi-cooperative right.
It's
Semi-co
it's a race type game, right? Where
yeah.
there are opportunities where you can directly challenge another character, but in general, it's more you're sort of acting on your own, but in a race. However,
Yeah.
there are opportunities where you could also help out the other characters if you want, because it's sort of whoever defeats the final villain wins, but if the villain wins, everyone loses, sort of
Yeah.
thing. So you do sort of want someone to win. It's just you're hoping that it's you who wins.
And that's one thing. If I were to change anything in this game, I would change it so it would be harder, but it would be a straight co-op. Because like I always thought the race to the end, and it's like, well, you win the game if you're the one that kills the beast. But like I feel that if you made it harder, and it was like everyone working together to do it, then it would be a much more fun
Oh.
experience, right?
Well, couldn't they just do that with scenarios? Because I seem to recall Runebound Second Edition had scenarios.
Yeah, and there are new scenarios that are coming out. Well, actually, the base game contains two different scenarios, although they're similar but different. But they both sort of have similar things where there's one big bad and he's doing something and you have to defeat him. But there are
those bad
other
guys who do something all the time.
yes. Um, but there are some new expansions coming out that are going to have new quests that may require slight differences in how the game plays out. So
Oh, okay. Well,
that will remain to be seen. But
yeah, if they like, that would be perfect. If they did like a scenario that changed it a little bit, so it wasn't more of a cooperative race, and it was more of like a cooperative game, then that would be even good. That was like, it was still a great game. That was just my only little, like, if I could tweak any little tiny little thing, right?
Well, I think
and speed it up a little bit.
And speed it up.
Speed it up a bit.
So the other thing that's different is that in second edition, your turn basically consisted of you moved and then you did one thing depending on where you ended up. So if you landed on an adventure gem, you did the adventure gem. If you landed in a town, you could do town step, which included healing and buying if you wanted to. Whereas in the new third edition, you get 3 actions each turn, and you can do whatever you like. Any number of actions could be devoted to whatever you want. So if you go to move and you don't get to where you want, you can take a second action to try to do another move to try to get exactly where you want.
I like that a lot better.
Yeah. Now, the only thing is, when you go to do an adventure, it costs you 2 actions. So a lot of the times you are going to be just moving and then adventuring. But if you're in a town, you could spend the whole turn in town. You could do like 2 market steps and you could heal. Or there's the other sort of third main difference is how you upgrade your character other than through buying equipment. The other way is now you can get skills, whereas in the second edition, every adventure gem that you obtained would be a certain amount of points, and then after you got a certain amount of points, you could upgrade either your mind, your body, or your spirit, which would help you in combat and on various tests. The new third edition, when you complete an adventure, you get a trophy, and as you go through the game, you're drawing skill cards, and those skill cards you can use. You can buy the skill that the card represents with the appropriate trophies that you have accumulated, or there are certain times when you can perform something called exerting, which is you spend a skill card from your hand, and that will let you perform some special action either in combat or when you're in the world to do something special. Normally it's in combat, but sometimes you can exert.
Each person that we play,
re-roll a die or draw whatever.
Yeah, sorry. And each person that we play has different class abilities that would use. So you would exert. So if I exerted in combat, I would do a different action than if someone else did.
Well, here, just to take this back to the theme a bit. So what's the land's called? Azeroth or something? No, that's
Terranoth.
Terranoth, not to be confused with Azeroth.
Azeroth is the Warcraft world, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So I'm looking at Terranoth. So I got this gorgeous map in front of me of Terranoth, and there's a bunch of tokens on it that tell me that these are where I can do stuff. Mm-hmm. Now I'm looking down in front of me, and I see what? I have a character sheet, I assume.
Yeah, you
have a character card.
Character card.
And then if you buy equipment, you put the equipment card beside your hero. If you get a trophy, the trophy would, is a card that you would sort of put near your hero card. And then you could spend those trophies to buy the skill cards that are in your hand, which then you put down beside your character. And those give you some benefit either in combat or in traveling or adventuring through the land.
Mm-hmm. And then I have a pilot tokens, or are they in a bag? I didn't. Sorry, when I walked over, I didn't look closely. What?
Oh,
was in front
the
of-
tokens are just separate, and then you just grab them.
You
in
just
your
keep
hand.
them. Yeah, you just keep them near your hero, and then you just use them when you're in combat.
Yeah.
Okay. So then next, who in front of each of you? Do you remember the story of what you had? So I guess I'll start with Shane.
Yes.
Oh, what character did you play?
What was the character in front of you? I remember you told
I was a cat lady, a cat warrior.
Cat Warrior.
And so the special abilities I had were she could exert, which is she could spend a skill card during battle to do a test. And the way you do a test is you draw skill cards off the top of the skill deck based on the value you have. So you still actually in this game you have a mind, body, and spirit stat. And they're used for your attribute tests. So I would have to test my spirit, and on certain.
So almost like a huckster pull.
Sort of like a huckster pull, but you do you draw a number equal to your skill value. So mine was sort of 3, so I drew 3 cards off the skill deck, and certain skill cards have a little icon on them, which is denote of a success, and if it's not there, it's a failure. So for every success I drew, that dealt 1 damage that couldn't be blocked to the enemy. I also had, by the end, a skill that let me earn other skills for 1 less trophy of my choice, which was pretty cool. I had a skill that added 1 to my mind value. I had a skill that...
You told me about one. You had a player killer one. We were talking about the car.
Well, that was my base skill. So my inherent ability was that I could, during combat, I could try to. It was called like hunt or stalk prey, and I could roll for a surge. So if on one of my combat tokens, if I had a surge, I could spend that surge to roll the terrain dice, and for every terrain that matched the terrain that I was on, that would do a damage to the.
So that was what we were talking about. Yeah. So sorry, not that we're spoiling this for the viewers, but we talked about it a bit on the way home, and that was when I said, "Oh, it sounds like it's a player killer ability rather than a monster hunting ability."
Yeah, but I also realized that it would have been very useful in the end battle, because that would have been the end battle was pretty much going to be guaranteed to be on the plains, which is the most plentiful land, and the most sides of the terrain die.
Gotcha.
So I might have actually done fairly well in that final battle had I felt that I was in the right position.
Gotcha. And so then is your cat lady just hanging out, or does she have like a epic story? Does it is there flavor text on it?
There is some flavor text on it, yeah, that talks about why she is, how she got to be a adventurer in the land of Terranoth and what she was doing. I don't recall what it is at the moment, but yeah.
Okay. All right, Matt.
Yo.
What was your dude?
I played Lord Hawthorne.
Oh, you totally looked at.
He was a fighter, and his abilities were his special ability was reach. So once per combat, I could immediately take an action after I take an action. So it's like you would go through and like once you do your tokens, you would have it so you would have attacks and like defenses and like surges and stuff. So if I did an attack, I can do a surge as well because I can double up my actions. I can only do it once per combat though. And then I had another one for once per combat round. I can actually re-roll any number of my tokens if I exert.
Or like recast tokens, I guess would be.
Recast tokens, yeah. And then, so he was pretty much strength-based. I had a cool skill called Intimidation, which any ability check, whether it was Spirit or the other one. What's the other one? Spirit or... What's the yellow
Mind.
One? Mind. I can still use the fighting one instead. So it's like I'm just gonna intimidate my way through any situation was pretty much what it was.
Oh my god!
It was awesome. It was like I'm just gonna use my intimidation.
You're
skill.
like Alexander the Great with the Gregorian knot or whatever. This knot is impossible to untie. and you just cut it with a sword.
Done.
Done.
That's pretty much my guy. And then I eventually got brutality, which I don't know if we even used in the dragon fight. I'm trying to remember now. Is brutality means that none of my attacks could be blocked.
I don't think we did.
So I smoked that dragon even more than I should have.
I think so.
And are you a human? Was your character a human?
I'm pretty sure he was human, yeah.
Yeah, he was human.
Yeah. The other fighter is a dwarf.
I see.
But I picked the human guy.
Okay. And then, do you have anything more you'd like to say about him?
No, he was just cool. And he
we'll
was
talk about him.
Slayer.
We'll talk about the rest of him in a minute.
Yeah.
We'll go back to Lenny, and
All
then we'll
right,
come back to Matt.
So I kind of came in partway through the game.
Oh yeah, because it was originally John that was playing.
Yeah, it was originally
Yes.
John, but then we were taking too long, so John had to go.
I'm just trying to. I know all I know is my character was a spellcaster.
He was Elder Mock, who was I think he was an orc.
He wasn't
orc or goblin or something.
He wasn't an orc. Sorry. Maybe he was.
I think he was an orc.
Yeah.
Well, he was non-human. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, if he was human, he's had some problems.
No, he was definitely non-human.
Yeah, your character, Lynn, was kind of weird because like you were doing well with him, but like it seemed like he was kind of like the jack of all trades.
So one guy played Elder Mock.
Yeah,
Is that what you said?
That was me.
Yes, that was Lenny.
He's a goblin or an orc, and it says you can restore a spirit once per turn and may draw an extra skill or exert to draw one skill. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, which I don't know if Lenny did that, but
oh, and I see Matt's. Does he have spiky shoulder blades? Oh, he could be from Warhammer.
Yeah, it sounds like you. It sounds like that sounds like him.
Yeah.
And I get one surge to unleash spirit and test. What is it? Mind.
Yeah.
+1 to deal 1 attack for each success.
Yeah, and you were doing that a lot in your fights, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So throughout the game, I was trying to. I got the skill of dual wield.
Okay.
So I was too far along, so I couldn't get my second weapon. I could not, for the life of me, get enough money and go to a town before the final event happened.
Okay.
That was what I was going for, and just kind of wondering what is the best strategy to get money, to get lots of money quick.
I think the quests, maybe.
Yeah, because there's quests.
Can you sell items? Can you sell items that you have?
You can sell
yes.
items as well.
So you see, and actually that might be the best thing is you can buy, if you're lucky, you can go to one of the cities and you can find goods, which generally you pay 1 or 2 for a good, and then you can go to either a town or a castle or a shrine, and you can sell them for like 5. And that's a good way to get a lot of money fairly quickly. It's just there weren't that many that came up, and Matt and Marty seemed to snatch them all quickly as soon as they came up.
Yeah.
So the 2 constraints for your decision. So I assume the decision points you have to make, if I had to guess, there's 3. One would be, I guess, deciding your 3 actions to determine how you're going to move, and then the other one would be managing your money, and then the other one I assume would be choosing tokens for whatever encounter you're in. Would those be the main decision points I'd be doing on my turn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much. I think the green quest, I think the adventures, though, that's the one that if you can't get the items that are in the shops, the second best thing would be going on the green adventures. Because the yellow adventures, like, those are good too, but that your character wasn't good at fighting, Lenny, so, like, the yellow ones might not have been worth it. But the green ones...
the yellow ones were
straight up combat.
Were straight up combat, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I was going green. My strategy was go as much as possible to go green for the quests.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just the quests sometimes take longer because you have to travel to some place,
Exactly.
and then you have to roll the terrain dice and fulfill. You have to roll a certain combination of terrain dice to get the good result of what you want.
Yeah.
And sometimes combat would pay off with like a half decent amount of gold, but most time you're only going to get one or two
Right.
Now, one thing that you did,
gold
Lenny,
from.
that you got a lot of lore. Now, pretty much to bring this back to the main quest, is the main quest was that there was a dragon that was terrorizing the land, and then he spawns at the end of Act 2, and then
How many acts? There are 3 acts.
Three
correct?
acts. Well, yeah.
There's 2
essentially.
acts and then the end game.
Yeah, 2 acts and then the end. So 2.5 acts.
And by default, what is it? He has 15 hit points.
Yes, he has 15 hit points.
Well,
And then-
technically you're not supposed to know that, but he has a certain amount of hit points, and
This
then
is a board game, not a video game.
and then for every lore you're able to accumulate during the game, that reduces the amount of hit points he has at the start of your battle.
Yeah, and Lenny's character was really good at getting lore.
Yeah.
And see, and that's when it brings it all back to why I think co-op would have been better for this, because Lenny's character excelled at lore and my character excelled at brutally murdering things.
Yes.
So I'm like, if you put that together, then like it would reduce the lore of Lenny. He was essentially, if he's part of the fight, he's teaching you how to fight this dragon essentially.
Yeah.
But you can't do that because at the end of the game, it literally becomes a race to kill the dragon, and you can only do it only one person can
Okay.
fight the dragon, right?
And
Yeah.
if you were to set this up again for 2 days to play, would you get a different monster, or do you always face a dragon?
Well, the other scenario is another monster. What is the other monster? Ian?
I thought you were gonna say-
The other scenarios you have to face a necromancer who's raising zombies all over the land. So
I thought you were going to say, oh, there's a different color dragon.
Yeah.
There's a green dragon.
You-
or a
that'd
red
be
dragon.
awesome.
You can fight a red dragon or a slightly redder dragon.
All right, so one more comment about the mechanics of the game, and then I have one more question for you guys. So the mechanical thing. So we've alluded to the length. Do you think the length is a showstopper for this, or do you think it's just a matter of the base scenario is just too long, and that maybe with expansions or web scenarios or even make it yourself scenarios, the game would probably flow a little quicker?
I
Like,
honestly think that if we had another kick at the can with the group, like with us, then it will already be quicker. We could
Yeah.
probably already shave like an hour and a half off of it if we did that.
Oh, okay. So you guys attest to it more.
It was a very slow start because we were all learning the rules, and I think it was hard because like Shane and Marty both played second edition, so I think it kind of took you guys a little bit to switch gears into what third edition was.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, especially Marty. He seemed to be like, "Holy smokes, this is a lot different." So, once that got going, though, once we all figured it out, it was smooth sailing from there. So, I'd really like to have another run at it, and us knowing what we're doing. To see,
I would argue that even shaving an hour and a half off still makes it a long game. It seems like
This is true.
It
Yeah.
seems like the kind of game that I wouldn't mind just setting up on a table somewhere, leaving it out, playing it for an hour and a half here, walking away, coming back a little later, continue on, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
that would,
or
perfect.
or play it over a couple nights. Like you set
Yeah.
up on a Friday, play
like
a
do
couple
Act
hours.
1 on Friday, Act 2
Yeah,
on...
and then yeah, exactly. Act 1 on Friday night, Act 2 on Saturday night, and then the end game Sunday.
Would this be like Netrunner, where after you finished a match, like say you finish Act 1, like using Lenny or your idea that you do it on a Friday, and you walk away, is there value in the sense that, like when you play Netrunner and you walk away from Netrunner, you think about the game and you think about what happened, and you can think of how to improve and do better stuff? If you finished Act 1, if you walked away, would you have a lot of things to think about? Is the game that kind of complex, or is it more that it's complex in execution?
I feel
no,
I feel,
you could-
sorry.
No, go ahead, Lenny.
I was gonna say I feel like you could, based on your play, you could switch up your strategy for instead of going for quests, you're like, well, maybe I'll do this, sell some stuff, and you could kind of switch up your strategy that way, or maybe you're, well, I'm trying to spec my character this way. What if I went, this route instead?
Yeah.
You know,
I agree. I think after the first night, you could take a look at sort of you could reflect back on how the first act went, and then formulate a plan for how you want to how you want to progress through the second
Okay.
act.
That's
to
cool.
really
I would
get to the point.
I would disagree because of my character. Only because of the character I played. Because
that's true.
My
Your
character
character.
was I need to get so powerful that I'll just straight up murder this dragon, and there is little else to him. So it was
Yes.
like I can't switch a strategy because my strategy was get cool weapons, get cool armor, and kill the dragon. And
This is true.
That's it. But is it that simplistic, or was it a bit more nuanced in the sense that you could look at different towns, and then you say you in this imagined scenario, you walk away and you're having dinner or go for a walk or something, and then you could say, you know what, I need that chainmail that's in this town versus.
well,
like,
yeah, but even I would argue that is much like there would be there is strategy that you could do that, but for me it would be significantly less than a Netrunner, for example. Netrunner, it's a lot deeper. I'll admit, like Lenny's and Shane's character both seem deeper characters, but my character in general was very simple and straightforward.
Okay.
It was
that's fair. That's fair, but it sounds like there's enough to think about.
Even Marty's character
Okay.
too, because Marty's character, he fought the dragon before I did, and it seemed like his character was way more complicated. He was doing these weird tricks to try to get more damage off the dragon, but then my character was straight up I've become a combat monster, and I'm just literally going. It's my attacks versus his, right? And I had a sweet armor.
Yeah, it's more like that armor sword combo.
Okay,
that
so
armor sword combo was sweet.
just
Yeah.
to wrap up Runebound, because we did play other stuff.
Yes, yeah.
Each of you, real quickly, tell me your favorite moment where the game just sang for you. So I'll start off with. Should I start off with Shane, or do you want me to start off with Matt?
No, don't start with me because.
All right, Len.
Well, yeah, start with Len.
Len.
Oh, I don't know if there's any one moment in particular. Just the whole experience, kind of, because I like high fantasy type stuff, right? So this is right up my alley. This is the kind of stuff that I like Final Fantasy, the board game kind of deal.
So was it sitting down and seeing the armor of Phanathiel or all the funny names and stuff like that, right away? Just sort of the theme took you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So that's.
I think for me it was when I started to get a feel for the new combat, and sort of started to see some of the things that the different characters could do and the different skills could do in combat. I really like that.
All right, Matt.
I would say my sweet armor weapon
The
combo.
moment I got the armor.
No, it's very similar to Lenny's.
Set the
Actually,
scene,
I was
Matt.
very
Set the
drawn
scene.
in at the beginning, and that's what drew me in, and that actually helped a lot when it had a long start to it when we're trying to figure it out, because it was like, oh wow, this is just like a video game open world RPG, which I love to play, and it's in board game form, so this is great. And then as I was building my character, it was getting even better because my character was getting stronger and stronger. So pretty much by the time I fought the dragon, I was this crazy crazy powerful fighter, and I just annihilated the dragon. I didn't oh, it was so great. Although, okay, so
Hey, Matt, what was your biggest disappointment followed by your moment of bliss?
oh, my biggest disappointment was when Marty stole the armor that I wanted from me. I was actually going for the spiked armor that he bought it, and I was like, "Oh, you jerk!" I was like, "That's the armor that I wanted," and then I think the other armor was there, so I'm like, "Oh, well, what's the other armor?" And it was more expensive, but it was a relic armor, which gave you 2 defense on the one side of the token and a surge on the other. And then, excuse me, it was it made it so on a surge it would activate the ability of the armor, and the surge would count as 3 surges instead of just 1 surge. And so I had an ability on my sword that on a 3 surge ability it would do 5 damage, which is quite a bit of damage all on its own. So with that together, I was doing crazy damage. So if I got a surge, I would do 5 damage to the guy. And then I would already have my axes, which are my combat side of the tokens, that were already doing damages. So there'd be like, sometimes I would do like, in one combat round, I would do like, 8 to 10 damage, and that's quite a bit.
Okay. And so I guess my consensus, since we've talked about this game now for about 40 minutes, I assume that you guys would play it again.
Yes.
So to wrap it up, would you play the same characters? Yes or no?
I'll say I would probably try a different character.
Yeah, I would probably try a different character, but I would play this character again in the future. But I think I would want to try someone else first.
Nah, I'd stick to the same one.
Yeah, Matt, you would totally play him again.
All right. Well, we've talked about the Terranoth. I've said
Terranoth.
Terranoth, the lengthy trips of Terranoth. But maybe we should talk about the.
Yeah, let's talk about one of the ones you did, Scott.
Well, I thought we'd talk real quick about Mansions of Madness, because the game we set up foolishly Friday night, because I think it was a bit overwhelming for us on the first night. But Mansions of Madness is explore a haunted house where one person is the keeper, which would be Shane, and the keeper sets up the mansion to basically try to kill off the investigators, and I think in our scenario summon something horrible. And meanwhile, the investigators have to try to, find clues and get items so that they can go and take out the bad guys. Which in our scenario was unfortunately just men with hatchets, which was kind of a bit of a letdown considering the beautiful figurines that come with the game.
With the different scenarios, your scenario literally only had the hatchet guys?
That's a Shane question.
Yeah, there was one zombie, but it basically didn't get a chance to do anything because by the time it showed up, these guys were powerful enough that most of the low-level guys were not much of a threat for them. It was a really weird, what do you call it when you're playing in a game and most of the enemies are, say, level 1, and then all of a sudden you face a level 10 enemy. It's this really steep difficulty curve.
Yeah, it's steep difficulty curve.
Erratic, I guess would be.
Yeah.
So now this is Lenny's game. So I feel, Lenny, what are your thoughts of experience of Mansions of Madness?
The setup takes forever.
But I've good news for that. Wait, save it, Shane.
No. I was gonna say, it took a long time because I don't think any of us had ever played it before, and leaving me as the keeper probably made it take even longer because I'm trying to read the rules as well as set it up because I want to know what everything is doing as I'm setting it up. But I found that rulebook completely laid out in a way that did not assist me at all in setting it up so that I was learning what each thing was as I was setting it up. So there was, to me, a lot of flipping around, and it took longer than it should have, and it's partially my fault.
I don't feel like you took any longer than, because I'm almost sure we've set it up a couple times before just to try to figure it out.
Okay.
And it's the crazy amount of time that it takes.
Well, there are a really large number of different components to the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminded me,
which is something that I like, but yes, takes an inordinate amount of time to set up.
I like lots of tokens as well, but I like them when they're different. Like I feel like the color scheme of all the tokens, it was like a whole bunch of stacks of little mini cards.
Yeah.
And then there was a whole bunch of little punched out tokens and stuff, but they all had a very similar color.
Sorry.
Someone just teleported out.
Yeah.
Sorry, I must return to my home planet.
It's like, I must go. My people need me.
My battery is depleted. I must go.
Yeah, I thought about it. My initial reaction actually was a bit of disappointment. Like I think I don't know why I had in my head like what I had in my head for the game, but I felt that it had a lot of pieces, but then at the same time it didn't feel like there were a lot of options on the investigator side. I assume on the keeper's side there's more to do because you have.
Now, sorry, how many? I didn't get a chance to play this. This is once that you guys played, but I wasn't there yet. But did you? How many scenarios are there?
My understanding is there's 5 scenarios, but when Shane was setting it up, he said that each scenario can be set up differently. So my impression is that the scenarios are like stop a summoning or kill a monster. Like they're sort of top level scenarios, and then the details are different each time you execute them. Is my understanding.
Yeah,
okay.
When you're setting up, the keeper has a
back.
series of
Welcome
questions.
Welcome back, Shane.
Yeah, sorry, just
it's weird. You teleported out, but you didn't teleport back in.
Yeah, I don't know how that
works. He's in disembodied voice.
He's over the comm now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as the keeper, when you're setting up, they ask you a series of questions, and depending on your answer to those questions will depend on how certain aspects of the scenario play out and how the setup goes.
Are they questions like, do you hate your friends?
No.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you hate your friends?
No, the questions are more like, in this scenario, the reason why this guy is upset is because of A, B, or C, and they're different, emotional responses to a possible event. Or one of them was, where does he like to hide out in his house? And it's one of 3 different rooms, and depending on which room you pick, that will depend on where different things go.
Oh.
And then cool. The third one is where was the wife's body buried, right? And that one was one of 2 places, right? So some of them you have 3 choices, some of them you have a couple choices, but each of them will affect sort of how the scenario plays out a little bit in certain aspects.
Yeah.
And some of them will actually change like the text of what you find, or the text of, what is said in the investigation. But yeah, I think this was definitely sort of like the intro scenario. And I think we all kind of wanted one of the more the more Cthulhu-ish scenario. This was like a light Cthulhu light version, right? It's just a guy going crazy, and there's some crazy people running around the mansion.
Yeah, I guess my disappointment was more that I think I kind of alluded to this when we were driving back, is that it felt like it wasn't a happy experience for anybody in how erratic it was. Like, so as the keeper, you're just doling out pain to everybody, and and then so we can't predict what that's going to be when we're coming through. So like the fact that every time a monster appears, you have to roll for horror, and all of a sudden your guy can't do stuff, or like you go into a room and the lights go out, and then Shane puts like 5 tokens on it and gives you like a card. And it's nothing against Shane personally. I think it's what any keeper would do, but I feel that kind of, I don't know, like it didn't feel like there was much order to it. But then again, I don't know if it's just a matter of not knowing the game very well. Like maybe we were too aggressive in our exploration, but I didn't think we were.
I think you guys spread out a little bit too much, but
I was thinking, like, do you think that since the theme is Mansions of Madness, right? It's a horror type game, right? Do you think that the fact that those things were in there for the theme, it's supposed to, instead of making you like scared, intense, kind of like, oh no, I don't know if I'm gonna make it through, do you feel that instead of doing that, it became more frustrating than actually
that perfectly it was meant to terrify me.
It was meant to terrify you, but it actually just
frustrated you. Yeah, annoyed, frustrated, and annoyed. Yeah,
and I feel Shane had it on his side too, because I think it would be, I mean, ours eventually we can just turn the brain off and say, "What? Fine, whatever is going to happen is going to happen." But I feel as the keeper, it would be annoying because you know where everything is to a certain extent, and you know what I mean. Like I don't know what if you want to speak to your experience, Shane, but I feel it would not be necessarily as much enjoyable for the keeper either.
It depends on the kind of person. Like I think John would have really enjoyed being the keeper because he sort of likes doing that kind of stuff, like doing the evil stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was not really a role that I really enjoyed. But also because I had no idea what I was doing or what I was supposed to do. Like I didn't know whether I was supposed to
Well, you
be
won though.
trying to sort of help you out or yeah, no, yeah.
Lenny,
I'm
do you
not
have
really a big fan of games where there's one bad guy versus, everyone else is co-op good guys.
Yeah, that's fair. Lenny, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Bit of a learning curve there, but I thought it was okay. The reason that I bought that game is because I looked up on the internet games similar to Betrayal at House on the Hill, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like the only similarity might be, or a couple similarities. You're
You're in a mansion.
You're in a mansion and you got the tiles. Other than that, it's a little bit of a deeper play than Betrayal it would be.
Yeah, I feel that also we as the investigator should have been way more tell Shane to go out of the room and figure out what we're going to do.
Or text each other.
Or text each other and just have a more elaborate plan. But if we started doing that, then Shane would feel even more left out. So, but
you see, that's the one thing. I didn't know whether I should be trying to spur you guys to the right place or whether I was because I was specifically doing things to try to sort of keep you away from where you needed to be, which I don't know. I felt like like the whole time like I'm just being a jerk, and I don't really
I kind of feel
that.
like that's the way it should be played, though.
Yeah, that is the way it should be played.
I know, but I didn't really, because
it went against the fiber of my being.
That's fine.
I just wanted to help you guys the whole time.
Well, it's not that I wanted to help. It's just I wanted to, move things along, or you
wanted to be
not make it so frustrating and annoying for you. Yeah, like I guess maybe also if I had played it more to try to do the horror, but then it seemed like also any of the horror aspects that I could have tried to do wouldn't have applied to you guys because you guys all had really high willpower, and all of my cards came up as, test their willpower, and then something, not quite as mean would happen to you. So then but because you guys all had good willpower, the only cards that I really could play against you that would actually have an effect were like the really cheap, mean stuff. So the good news, bad news is that they being Fantasy Flight Games, the publisher of Mansion Madness, on Monday, just after the weekend, announced that there's a second edition of Mansions of Madness coming out. And in this version, there is no keeper. Instead, you download an app, and the app makes all the keeper's decisions. So it's now fully cooperative. And I think I didn't fully read the rest, but I think they made a few changes to how it plays to sort of smooth the investigator's portion. But the main thing is that it's fully cooperative now, and
they're getting ready for Gen Con, which is coming up. So they're slowly releasing, like Fantasy Flight is putting out a bunch of releases of like teasers of stuff, and then they're going to probably showcase it at Gen Con. And so my understanding about it makes sense. I think with Mansions of Madness, they're going to come out with a converter kit so that you can convert first edition to second edition,
or at least use your components from first edition with second edition, so that your investment in first edition doesn't feel like a total waste.
And I wonder if the app might work with it too. If you download the app and it says, "Are you playing first edition or second edition?" But we'll see.
Do you think? That'd be a good idea for the app.
I think you'll still need second edition, but it's just you'll be able to use a lot of the components from first edition, and there'll be like some scenarios that will only work if you have first edition with second edition.
Gotcha. Is that exciting news for you, Lenny?
That actually is. I feel like I would enjoy that more than the current edition.
I think it would be a bit better too. I think it'd help. It would actually
Just be
hopefully speed up the setup process a little bit, because then you don't have the person playing the keeper trying to read and make the decisions.
You can also
for the scenario.
you can also almost do like setup as you go. So as in like you are at the front of the mansion and then you go through a door and you pull out a tile. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
and I think that's how they're going to do it too.
Yeah.
Possibly.
I assume
I'm
the
not- I'm
app
not-
needs some
I'm not
kind of
100%
input
sure,
as
but-
well.
yeah, like
Yeah.
you have entered the kitchen. Press the kitchen button.
Okay.
Knives, throw out. And so yeah, so that's sort of a happy note at the end of it, because I felt that
Maybe.
well, it makes us feel
Last
a
time
little-
I was happy about a second edition, I got very disappointed.
Well, we'll get to that. Just to wrap up the Mansions of Madness, is I would say, like, I feel it's just a happy note in the sense that all the issues and concerns that we had, apparently we are not alone, and the designers have taken it back and have addressed those, appear to be trying to address those concerns. So I'm looking forward to seeing what it looks like. Hopefully I can do like a play at a board game cafe or a demo, maybe at Fan Expo or something. So we'll see. I don't know when it comes out though.
I don't think they announced a date yet.
Yeah. So do we want to talk about all the fun stuff I played while you guys were playing like 2 games?
Yeah, let's talk about all the things you did there, Skit.
Well, there was a lot of highs and lows. Actually, mostly highs. I had only one low. I got to play some Netrunner. I got to play 4 games of Netrunner, and I actually beat Shane, which was super exciting because that never happens. I know Shane's going to disagree with me, but he has not kept diligent records, so he cannot prove or disprove my statement.
He doesn't
Other than,
keep...
that one night where we played like 5 games and you won every single one of them?
Nope, that's not been documented, so I don't think that happened.
That was when you lived at the condo.
which is so weird that you're refusing to have better stats. It's like that; those don't count because I did not write those down.
Well, I have, as we all know, I have a love-hate relationship, but the 4 games were quite exciting for me in the sense that it seems to be I'm improving my deck building, except like the one game against Shane when I used the new runner, because little Netrunner nerdiness for you, kind of similar to Final Fantasy nerdiness. Though a new person has taken over Netrunner, and he came down with a whole big smackdown of restrictions, or well, not 2 Erettas and then a most wanted list, which essentially increases the influence cost of each card. So you can't use as many of cards out of faction because of the wanted list. But then he came out with his first pack that he had designed. And I think I showed Shane almost all the cards out of it, and I feel he wanted to make a first impression, and I feel almost every card was amazing in that, or at least strong in that pack. And so I was using the new Anarch runner out of it, which is a gentleman named Null, who is almost, I would argue, old school Netrunner in the sense that he can once per turn discard a card to make an ice go down by 2 strength. So he's very much about just getting money, running, and all that. And so I built a deck with him, and I felt the deck was pretty successful. I forgot about Lotus Field when I was building the deck, but otherwise I feel it worked pretty well.
Can you use I know Netrunner very little, but that Anarchy guy, the one that can do the -2 to ice, can you also use the Ice Carver? Is that what?
Yep.
Yes, you could.
Yep.
On top of that, so it'd be
Yes.
-3?
Yep. And parasites. You could be really annoying. You could just say that's -2. Oh, there's a parasite on it. It's dead.
That's crazy.
So, and it just helps you on economy too. Even if you're not like doing ice destruction, just lowering the cost of something by 2. It also makes your breakers easier to use and stuff like that. I don't know if Shane, if you want to say how things were on your side against Null, because your deck seemed to be running quite well. I made a couple bad plays.
Yeah, it was a fortunate matchup for me, I guess you could say, because yes, you were going with the lower strength, and I just happened to put Lotus Field in that deck, so it's one that you can't lower the strength of. So that was effective against you, and Yeah, no, I was playing a Spark Agency deck, which basically every time I res an advertisement card, the runner would lose a credit. So I was trying to go for a little bit of, make the runner a bit poorer, and
Which
it
would be
seemed to work
super
fairly well for
annoying.
me.
Yeah, well, it is NBN, so that's what
All of
that's.
NBN is annoying, just in different ways. So,
Although I guess you could argue they're all the corps, but I feel that NBN specializes in it. But
well, I don't
uh,
know. Jinteki with their, oh, do one net
oh,
damage
that's
here, oh, do one
true.
net damage there.
That's true.
Or
I
replicating
guess the
perfection.
difference.
Oh, you want to run on my remote server? Can't do it until you run on
That's true.
a
Jinteki and NBN are the passive
the
aggressive
central server.
annoyance.
Yeah.
They're the passive aggressive annoyance versus HB and Wayland, which is in your face annoying. So, but yeah, no, I thought that game went well. As I said, like, sometimes you can't plan for everything, but I think with just a couple tweaks, I think that deck's pretty solid. So, and then on the one I actually beat Shane, I played Wayland. Wayland original ID. So every time you do a transaction card, you get +1 credit for it. And I was against Shaper, and I think that I feel my deck worked well.
Your deck worked very well.
So yeah,
That was a fortunate matchup for you because that was my deck that is weak against barrier ice, and you had really good barrier ice.
yeah, and also the premise of the deck is to up the strength of everything. So cards and like everything's designed to slowly increase the power level. They're almost the opposite of null. Null is designed to lower the strength of ice, and then the Wayland is to raise the strength of ice. And then the other two matchups I had was against Jason, and that one was interesting just because I played a different identity that I usually don't play with a deck that I play all the time, and it worked way better with the new identity. So that's something to be said for that. And then again, I had a good play with Jinteki as well, although I lost that one.
And then you didn't. That was, or those were all against Shane.
No, 2 were against Jason,
Oh, okay.
and then 2 were against Shane. And I guess for me, it's just emotionally, it was nice to have decks that actually worked, which is why I am always saying that Shane always beats me. But anyway, as far as moving on to other games, while you guys were doing your Runebound, I played Sythe.
Yeah, that was the one game I wanted to play, and I didn't.
Yeah,
get a chance
I
to.
wanted to play that too. Maybe we should have played that on Sunday. But no, I'm glad we played Lord of the Rings. So
There's just too many games.
Yeah, we'll get back to that in a second. So as far as Sythe, and we've discussed it before on the podcast, and I think it lived up to expectations, at least for me. Lenny might have a different opinion because he was watching it. He didn't play, but he watched it. But yes, it was the bits were nice, the money, like the coin money and the little resources, and just the mechanics of the game worked as expected. Combat in it is kind of funny in the sense that it's not destroy combat, it's push people out combat. So if you defeat somebody in a territory, they have to send their guy all the way back to the start, which doesn't seem like that big of a penalty until you realize moving people around the game is a lot of work to get people to various positions. So thinking upon it, I think that actually the pushing people out is just as frustrating as if they were destroyed. So but yeah, I think it's an excellent game, and I highly recommend we play more of it. The other game I played, well, there's so many, but the one that we played I don't know. Do you guys have any questions about Sythe? I'm sorry, I'm really.
No, that's okay. Yeah, you.
No,
can
I just want to play it.
Wait, whose Sythe was it?
It was
that was
Jason's.
Oh man,
Jason's got all the good games.
Well, he brought 4, I would argue, 4 excellent games that I played. So, although that said, he was smart. He just brought them out, whereas the rest of us brought our games in bags and just left them there and didn't open them. he brought out and like, hey, do you want to try this? And we're all like, sure.
Yeah, that's a good strategy.
Good strategy. So yeah, the other game he brought was Champions of Midgar, which is a Viking worker placement game.
Jeez, I didn't even know you guys played that one.
Yeah, no, we played that one start to finish, and it was a combination of you used little workers to go around to get resources together so that you could assign your Viking dice to fight monsters.
Nice.
And you could either fight monsters that were attacking the town you're from, or you could use resources and get a boat and go find monsters across the ocean and fight them. So And yeah, so it had different ways of scoring. Like it reminded me a lot of Lords of Waterdeep.
Oh,
But
I was just about to ask. I'm like, is it Lords of
it's
Waterdeepy?
it's Lords of Waterdeepy, but I kind of liked it better because of the dice, like the fact that the fact that they brought in combat, like it's not really combat because you basically roll dice and see if you have more swords than they have shields, but still it has that planning element because there's like levels of the dice. So like white dice are, I guess, Viking rookies, and then there's like spearmen, and then there's like blacksmith, which are like the best Vikings. And so you assign your dice accordingly, and then even some monsters don't allow you to use certain creatures or certain dice. So like certain ones are immune to spears and stuff like that. And
okay. So is it like a paper rock scissors thing, or is it just like a
no, just
like,
you flip up
flip
certain
things? Okay.
yeah, you flip certain. There's like a row of them that you can fight, and sometimes when you flip them over, you'll see that they can't be spears can't fight them and stuff like that. So, but yeah, no, it was a fun game. It had a fixed 8 turns. You had 8 turns of fighting monsters, and then whoever had the most glory at the end of 8 turns wins the game. And I said it's a lot like Lords of Waterdeep, but I feel it is. I felt it went smoother than it, and I felt there was more interesting decisions to make in the village. And I think if you thought it like it felt more thinky, I guess is what I'm saying. Like more interesting things you could do, and also if you didn't want to think, it's like you could just grab a bunch of Vikings and go fight. Which was
now, could you? Is it more interact? Like, do the players have more interactivity with two of each other?
no, it's very passive aggressive. As in,
Oh, okay. As like
Ian,
Lord of the Rings.
why did you steal those?
Or not
spearmen?
Lord of the Rings, Lords of Waterdeep.
Lords of Waterdeep. Yeah, it had a lot of passive. Why'd you take that monster on me? Because you have to assign a worker to what creature you're going to take. So I've assigned a worker saying I'm going to fight the troll, and then you're like, why'd you do that? I was going to fight the troll.
Oh, okay,
So-
okay. So it's very Lords of Waterdeep in that, because
Yeah.
that's really the only player interaction you have.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
And I also played the deck building game.
The deck building game.
The deck building game, which is like basically Dominion, but instead of doing the abstract medieval thing you're doing in Dominion, you're building a deck, which I felt made it a great game. But it was a bit more attacky than the Dominion because you could put rotten wood in other people's decks. And Lenny and I split 1 win each, I believe.
Yep.
And you liked that, didn't you, Lenny? I thought it was a pretty good game, eh?
Yeah, it was a nice little, not too much thinking involved kind of game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like we were playing Lord of the Rings at the time, so it seemed way less complicated than our game.
Well, then I also played 2 games. Ian and I played 2 games of Jaipur as well, a 2-player card game where you are merchants and you can you're trying to collect sets of things to sell them for coins, and then you have camels that you can use as wild cards to trade in and out and stuff like that. Again, also very simple to use, simple to play, and I quite liked it as well. I think that's probably one of the best 2-player games because it flowed so easily, and there's a lot of tactics to it and strategy, but it's not overly complicated. So I highly recommend that as well.
Sorry, what was that one called again?
Jaipur.
Jaipur?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And then why don't we wrap up this very long podcast with a quick discussion about Lord of the Rings?
Oh, wait, no.
Oh,
we need
wait,
to
what
talk about
about-
2 other games really quick first. Spyfall, which we all played.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry. I meant. Oh, okay. Do we want to do those instead of Lord of the Rings?
No. We'll do those really quick, and then we'll
okay.
do Lord of the Rings really quick.
So we played 2 party games. I think those are the only party games we played. We played
Yeah.
Spyfall, yep.
which is a game. I don't know if I've ever said this on the podcast.
We
but
might have talked about it earlier on a podcast.
Yeah.
I
So
can't
basically,
remember.
one person is a spy. Like you each get dealt cards. One thing just says spy on it, and everyone else gets a card saying location. The spy wins.
Location and a
Job.
job title, or
Yeah. And if as the spy, if you can figure out where you are, you can reveal your the spy and guess where you are. Everyone else is trying to figure out who the spy is. On your turn, all you can do is pick somebody who didn't ask you a question and ask them a question. So if I asked Matt a question, Matt could then ask Shane a question, but couldn't ask me a question. So it is the wonderful awkwardness of seeing people trying to ask very vague, not leading, but yet informative questions and receiving vague, yet not very helpful answers as people go around trying to figure out who the spy is. And then you vote, or as always, the spy could just flip and say, I'm the spy and we're on the space station.
Which I didn't know when I was the spy. Because I would have totally said I was on the space station.
I don't know what I can say about Spyfall. I quite enjoyed the game. It was interesting to play it with a different group of people because I typically play that at lunch, and much more aggressive players. I have never, like, all those games we didn't have anybody reveal they're the spy and guess where we are. Whereas when I played it with my lunchtime group, almost every other game someone flips and says we're here. Like so, it was just interesting to have more like pensive players to figure out, like, who are trying to figure it out more, like, without revealing themselves, versus the
versus the
aggressive
other way where it's
yeah,
super
the aggressive play. So it was interesting to see how different dynamics worked on in that. So
Well,
I
that
don't
might be only for the fact that a lot of us in that group never played it before. So we would probably play a little bit passive when the guys who played
Yeah.
lunch probably play it more often than we did.
No, well, some of them had, but some of them hadn't. Like, we've had new people come, like, people have come over because we're laughing so much as we play it. They'll be like, "Well, what are you playing?" And then, "Can I play?" And so we had random people come in, and literally after one round, everybody's in, right? So
Oh, okay.
yeah, I don't know. Again, I think it's just personality, but I think that's one of the great things about the game is the fact that you could play it with different people and you get a completely different experience. So,
Sweet.
but how did you guys find it?
I liked it, but out of the party games, I like Deception a lot more. But it was a lot of fun. Like it also was like we played at the end of the night too, so we're all probably a little punch drunk. But it was a lot of fun. I like being the spy, and I wish I knew that I could say it before the end of the round to say that it's like, oh no, we're here, because I did know we were on the space station. But
I'm glad I was not the spy because I wouldn't have known where we were at all. I felt like even though I knew where we were, I would have liked to have a cheat sheet of all the different locations so that I would have a good idea of, I could ask a question that would maybe point to a different location and see if the spy would give an answer that would
Yeah, that's a good point, because
call them out.
I knew all the locations, but that's because I've played this game for months. So
Yeah.
for me,
Yeah.
which is what you
Like,
probably know.
Matt, did you know that there was a space station
yeah,
location?
I only knew that because Scott told me when he was describing the game to me earlier. He said the space station was one of them. So I knew
okay.
there was a space station. So I'm like, oh, and I think that was the example you used when you were explaining the game to me too. So
That's funny.
I knew that it was there. So I was like, oh yeah, I know I'm on the space station.
Yeah, it's I find it very funny, and also I don't know if it's like, once you get more comfortable with it, you ask funnier questions. Like John and I had probably the most. I think John's played. I don't know how much John's played it, but I think we were asking the more funny questions and seemed more relaxed. But then, of course, Matt would point out that we were also very good murderers as well.
Yes.
Deception.
Which
So
brings us
Yes,
to our
very
next-
deceptive.
yeah, so deception is I would argue it is taking the Spyfall concept of hidden roles and combining it with Clue.
Yes.
And so different people are investigators, but there's also a murderer and an accomplice and a witness. And so there's a forensic scientist who runs the game, and so they ask the murderer and the accomplice to open their eyes and see who they are. Then they close their eyes, and then the witness opens their eyes, and then the forensic scientist points out who the two people are. Not saying who the murderer is, but just who the two people that could be the murderer or the accomplice. And then everyone else has no idea what's happening. And then they open their eyes, and then they have 4 weapons.
Clues.
And
Yeah,
4
4 weapons.
4 weapons and 4 clues. And we just go around. Oh, sorry. The forensic scientist gives some almost Dixit-worthy clues in the middle to try to get people to guess who might be the murderer.
Yeah, because there would be like tabs like it's like time of murder,
Yeah.
like type of murder, like suffocation or whatever.
And motive for murder.
Motive, yeah.
And so from those, you have a conversation. But unfortunately, the murderer and the accomplice are also having that conversation. And the witness doesn't want to reveal who they are, because if the murderer can guess who the witness is, they get off. And so my first game playing this, I was the murderer. Which I felt was the best game I played out of all the deceptions that we played. I felt I played the murderer quite well. Much more better than
It was super annoying because I was the witness. And I was trying so hard, and everyone everyone thought I was crazy. And I was like, all right, fine. And then I lost. Oh, well, the thing is, though, it's like I wouldn't even want, even if they guessed you, Scott, because the thing at the end of the game. So if we figure out who the murderer is, the murderer and the accomplice can guess who the witness is, and if they guess who the witness is, then they win.
Yeah, we knew you were the witness.
And I tipped my hand.
Apparently you were the only one pointing at Scott.
I was the only one because it was like
in my defense, it was really well set up for me because the clues in the middle were terrible. Because like takeout, I think it was restaurant.
Yeah,
spice, and I was like,
the location of murder was restaurant.
Yeah, and I was like, well, there was like Marty had takeout, and then
I kept picking Marty because he had a picture of a takeout container with food in it. I'm like, right there, he's the murderer.
Yeah, but
it was terrible.
Yeah, but when I was,
I would argue that witness is the most stressful. Because even like when we played later games, when Mike was the witness, he was like, no one believed him.
He was going crazy.
And I was the accomplice, and I just pinned the accomplice onto him.
The trick with the witness in the hidden roles, like there are a lot of like Merlin and stuff like that, you have to take a step back and offer a sophisticated enough theory that doesn't sound like you've thought of it. Like, you know what I mean? Like you could be like, well,
it's like, oh, what if...
So if we had to think about restaurants, like, so what if we're in Hong Kong? Could it be something stupid like Hong Kong was spicy? Because Scott has spicy, and like all the restaurants, and like would that make? And then all of a sudden it would plant a seed in someone's head, and they would look over at me and say, "Well, kicks are kind of physical." But man, the slit throat and the takeout food, I felt was a very big thing for
yeah, it was way more. Although I was desperately
I would say
trying.
Forensic Scientist might be the most stressful job in that game, because a lot of the times the clues can be very generic and not helpful.
That's true. It's very Mysterium is a lot like this game as well, and that's like I never played the Forensic Scientist, but like I played the Ghost in Mysterium, and it's very much the same. You give them a card, it's like, okay, this clearly means this. And then they start talking. It's like, no, they're not getting anything of what I was saying with it, right? So it'd be the same thing. You would put the evidence down saying, oh, well, this clearly will mean this. And then they start going on a different path. And you're like, oh, no, that's not what I wanted. But yeah, no, great game. Great party game.
Yeah, I actually think I kind of like it more than Mysterium.
I do too, yeah.
I feel it because Mysterium, similar to Mansions of Madness, has a very complicated setup process. Whereas I felt with Deception, you're right into the game.
Yeah, and also with Deception,
easy to set up.
Deception, everyone seems like excited. Like everyone gets more excited. Mysterium is like, quiet, methodical, and everyone's kind of like doing their own thing. But with Deception, everyone's
I've seen rowdy Mysterium games, but I guess
not with the crew we were with, I guess.
But no. But I think you're to your point though, because it's a quicker setup. You're into the game, and you can get like a couple rounds under your belt very quickly. Mm-hmm. And then you can start getting into the game. Whereas I feel Mysterium, you play one game, and then you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to play another one of that. You know what I mean? Like it's just because of all the setup and all the...
Yeah, it takes a lot longer to get through.
Yeah. Okay, so we're running pretty long.
So then on the last game we played was we played the Fellowship scenario, which was Murder at the Prancing Pony for Lord of the Rings, the card game.
Lord of the Rings, the collectible card game.
I would argue that one murder left to a massacre of people because... well, Shane, you can keep going, but...
Just to be clear, we've talked about the game before, so if you just want to maybe focus on the scenario, Shane.
Yeah, so the scenario was that our adventuring party went to Bree, and there was a murder at the Prancing Pony, and we were tasked with investigating the murder and finding out who the murderer was and where they were hiding out so that we could bring them to justice. So a lot of the locations that we had to place progress on allowed us to look at the investigation deck, and the investigation deck was a set of cards that had a bunch of different suspects and a bunch of different possible locations in it, out of which we had already drawn the actual murderer and hideout. And so when we were looking through the investigate deck, we would reveal other suspects and other hideouts that were not obviously the real suspect and murderer, so we could cross them off the list. Because then, once we got to the second phase of the quest, we were able to say, okay, we've accumulated enough evidence now. We think it's this person and this is where they're hiding. And we had narrowed it down so we knew where the location was, but we weren't 100% sure of who the actual murderer was. It was one of like three people, and John nailed it with his first guess, and he got it right, which was really good. So then we had to obviously bring the murderer to justice, i.e., slaughter them wholesale.
i.e., commit genocide.
That's where Matt stepped in. Gee, what a surprise! Matt played the
for the combat monster.
The combat monster.
So just to take a step back real quick. So we've discussed this before, and I remember Matt saying that he wanted to see if this might be a game he would want. And apart from the small font size, what do you think, Matt?
The font size, it was it's not that great, but I have an issue with all card games font size because I'm blind, apparently.
You need to get new glasses.
Yeah, I do. I know.
You should get your vision checked first, and then.
Well, yeah, I'll get my vision checked because I know it's bad.
Yeah, do it the right way.
Well, just so you get the right prescription. That's all. That's the only reason. You get your eyes checked so you get the right prescription.
all right. I'll get my eyes checked.
The right ones for you.
We'll check next episode.
But yeah, so as far as I wouldn't call my card game dilemma a card game dilemma, because not compared to Scott, but I was always looking for a card game too. Lord of the Rings and Ashes were pretty much the last two on my docket. But I would have to say, with Lord of the Rings, as much fun as I had, especially in the like second and final phase of it, I feel that I would probably get more out of Ashes just because for the fact that I am not as much into the card games as you guys are. And Ashes is a very kind of like quick and easy kind of like literally just a duel, or like, you know, if we have 4 players, right? It doesn't seem... It seems more inviting because it's not nearly as complicated. With Lord of the Rings, I could see when we were doing the scenarios and stuff, I'm like, wow, it would have taken a lot to build these decks the way that they were built. And like, I feel like it would be too complicated for me. Like, it's not too complicated, but it would be like too much work for me to get into.
It's definitely, Ashes is I don't know if this is a right term to use, but it's more accessible.
Yes,
in that respect.
I would say streamlined.
Or streamlined, yeah.
Because honestly, all the mechanics that are in Ashes are in all the other games you play. With, I guess, except Netrunner because it's weird. But it really is. I mean, like everything, all those games kind of bounce off of Magic, right? Like Magic was the first one. And Ashes, I would argue, is a very streamlined, well-built Magic. Like it's a duel. You're putting monsters out to damage things. It's more important to have lots of either powerful guys out or people for offense and defense, like all those rules. And what I'm saying, Matt, is that if the theme doesn't catch you on the Fantasy Flight LCGs, then I can see why Ashes has. Like Ashes, they've just designed a game. I also feel that Ashes, because it's done by a smaller company, the release schedule for it is much more stretched out. So you get more, like only now those 2 expansions have come out, right? So you have more time to play with the pool, and the pool isn't as big. Let's be honest, Ashes has a very small card pool.
And I feel for me that's perfect.
But for that small pool, it's really well designed.
Yeah. Well, if you're gonna have a small card pool, you better make sure all the cards are good.
Well, the thing was, it's like I purchased Ashes and the 2 expansion decks before the thing started, and I remember like one great thing was about it was that when Scott's like, oh, you should try playing the Rin, the ice giant guy, because I kind of like that kind of theme for that guy. And so I was like, oh, yeah, but I got to make the deck. And then you just said, no, that is the deck. You could just play it with that deck. And I was like, oh, man, that's awesome. I'm like, it's so nice to just be like, because like with the data packs for Netrunner and stuff like that, those are just cards to enhance the decks that you've already made.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
but this is like, no, this is a deck. This is a standalone deck. Now, obviously, it's just a starter deck, and you could do other stuff with it. Like, you could build decks and stuff like that. But it's
Yeah.
like, it's so nice that the
But
games
yeah,
are
you
sort
can
of
just
like,
take it out and play it, and
Yeah.
it is really nice.
yeah, because it's like, you don't know how that guy plays, right? So it's like, well, why don't you play it just like this, and then you can see, and then you can go after you play it a little bit of what cards you would need to add to enhance the deck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really like that a lot.
Yeah. Ashes too, though. The funny thing is, I don't know if it's because I played a lot of games. Is like Ashes. You can. So far, I've seen that once someone gets set up, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion. But again, I don't know. Maybe it depends on the Phoenix Borns, but I find a lot of the Phoenix Borns, like once they're set up, you're like, you know what, we can just concede. Like I've played Ashes a lot with a friend of mine at work, and we noticed after, like, because now I've probably played over 20 games of Ashes. I found that you're like, oh, you're not gonna, I can't come back. Like the person just like, I'm not being like, they're like, why don't we just stop now and I'll just restart, because we found that there's no, I don't know, what Hail Mary plays.
No counter.
Yeah, you get to a point where you're obviously ahead, and no matter what the opponent does, you're gonna stay ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Like,
that's pretty
there's
much
no-
what happened in the game that Shane and I
Yeah,
played
that's
over
what
the
happened
weekend.
in our game.
Yeah,
Is
like there's
that-
no push everyone in the town square and have a big shootout and maybe pull out a miracle hand. There's no
Yeah.
running on something and just happening to get the agenda. Like there's no, and that's not a knock against Ashes. Actually, it probably is a strength in the sense
Yeah,
that you
because
can
it's the exact opposite of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it has a very slow. Yeah, it doesn't have a slow burn. Like it's going to go fast, and so you can figure out very quickly. You know what? I'm done. I'm going to concede, and then at least we can start up a new game.
Yeah,
And I think that's and mind you, that's just because that's where I am in the game. Like I've played it a lot, so I'm pretty comfortable to say, you know what? I know I'm done. Good game, and then let's play another one. And like in comparison to Netrunner, when we played Netrunner on lunch, I would get one game out. Again, I still like Netrunner, but I mean, if you compare it to Ashes, we could get 2 games in.
yeah.
Just-
Because
just-
it's quicker.
Just because it's quicker.
right? Yeah.
But-
Now that's just with the 2-player per game, though. I think a 4-player. It would be
4
nice.
player, it drags. Man, that was epic.
Yeah, like I feel like a 4-player would be good, right? Just to get every so often, not all the time, but
Yeah.
like it would be good just to like, because you got to be a lot more careful because you can't just go
What-
nuts on a guy, right?
Yeah, I'm interested though, as I've said all this, is that I'm still doing pre-constructed, and I'm interested what constructed decks would look like, where you're using 3 3 types of magic, or mixing your dice pool up and like mix and matching all the different cards. Like that's the next. I wonder if what I've experienced with pre-constructed translates into full open constructed decks, like where you mix and match stuff.
Mhm.
If you still have that quickness. I assume you do, but
Yeah. Or it would depend on how the other person constructs it too, right? Like,
yeah,
who knows?
who knows? But I think we should. Is there anything else we want? I guess we can save some of this for next time, as they say. But yeah, no. Any other thoughts on the stuff we've discussed? We kind of sidebarred on Lord of the Rings there. Anything you would
That's
like to
okay
add?
though, because we did play Ashes, so it is a
Yeah.
valid
Yeah,
topic.
it does. Yeah, it
Just to bring
validates
it,
everything.
yes. I guess to bring it
Just
back
to bring it back to Lord of the Rings, yeah, I think Matt's deck was probably one of the best decks I had put together for the game.
Yeah, it
And-
showed.
And I would also have to say that I think seeing the 4-player game, I think it is a game as well that would probably be better with 2 to 3 players max.
Yeah. The other
Having
part-
that extra 4th player, even though it gives you some extra people on the table, especially my deck, the lore deck, I didn't feel like I was adding much to the game. And I really felt like it would have sped things up if there were only 2 or 3 people playing, and you could have taken what my deck did do and mixed that with one of the other decks, and had a more expedient 3-player game.
Yeah, the one thing I was thinking of actually, and this is my defense of the games, why I feel Matt should give them another try, maybe even Game of Thrones. Ashes has done the work for you. They've packaged it all together. And the argument that many people say about like Netrunner, Doomtown, all these games is that half the game is playing, like actually being at the table playing, the other half is the deck building component. And that the fun, a lot of the fun of Netrunner is when you sit in your, wherever you, at your desk or whatever, with a pile of cards and you go through and you try to figure out what can work with what and like build a deck, and then you play test it and then it fails. And then you go back and like the Martian from Looney Tunes, like, you know, back, that one didn't work, back to the drawing board. And kind of that deck building element, because I feel, Shane, like you've enjoyed Lord of the Rings because you've done the deck building element. Like you've got to sit there and go through all the elves, go through all the dwarves, and like, and I feel that Ashes.
Well, and it was satisfying to see my decks play as I had basically envisioned them. So
Yeah.
even though I don't know if John had a lot of fun, but his deck quested perfectly, and that's what it was designed to do.
Yeah.
It's just, I think John is like Matt. John likes to do the combat stuff, and his deck wasn't really designed to do combat. Like it can do combat, but combat is its, you know, tertiary function.
Yeah.
And so with Matt's deck working amazingly well at combat, where nothing could touch him and he could take down anything, you know.
Yeah,
it was just
anything
getting
and then
ridiculous.
some.
I was like,
I think that sort of turned John off a little bit, but his deck did exactly what it's supposed to do, and Mike's deck to a certain extent did what it was supposed to do. It maybe could have run a little bit better, but it still it was still there to sort of help out everyone, and yeah, so it was good. It was satisfying to see the decks, you know,
in
or at least
motion.
And
most of the decks, in motion, and it gave
yeah.
me some ideas for, again, I would do it differently. I would maybe only do 3-player, but again, I was trying to get more people involved, so and I wanted to see a proper 4-player game. So
yeah, no, that's as much as I joke about how you beat me all the time, although it is true.
Jeez.
I am happy when I play, when the decks work well. And if you ever want to understand why I get frustrated at the other side of the table, it is when it doesn't work. Either it's a deficiency on my part because I don't understand how the deck works, or it doesn't work the way I think it should, which is what happens every time we play Star Wars. And then, or it's because I have constructed a crappy deck. And the Netrunner games, even though I lost, like I split 2-2.
yeah,
I enjoyed all 4 games because the decks were performing the way
that you had envisioned them to,
or at least they were on the right path to obtaining the dream that I had. And that's when I love flow. And the one thing about Ashes, those pre-constructed decks, which is why I'm hesitant to construct my own decks, is that those pre-constructed decks are very well balanced against each other, and they work very well, and you can discover the strategies very quickly. The problem I'm having is that some of the Phoenixborn I don't find interesting anymore because I've figured them out. Like I don't like to play Aerodel because I'm like, I know what I have to do, and I know what I've got in this deck, and I know how it's going to work.
yeah.
You know, Maione, when I was playing Ian, I realized that I really understand how to play Maione because now mind you, Ian had not played Ashes before, but I gave him Aerodel, which is the easiest Phoenixborn, and he was figuring it out. But the problem he was having was that I understood Maione to the point that I'm like, no, I know what I need to do against you, and I did it, and he had no luck. Like I completely shut him down. Yeah. And so I'm getting to the point now where I think with the pre-constructed decks that I have to move on from them, but then I don't know if everyone else is that comfortable yet with, like, maybe this weekend, Matt, we can play some pre-constructed with you so you can try each of the Phoenixborns.
Yeah, that's what I want. I want to do at least once for everyone.
Yeah, I've played everyone at least twice except Cole. I've only played Cole once, and boy, that I will say the one Cole game I had though was fantastic.
Yeah, Cole's pretty sweet.
Cole has the Hammer Knights, and they are awesome.
No, not the Hammer. You think that the Hammer Knights are the best one he has, but it's actually the Anchornauts. The Anchornauts are the best unit he has. I know you don't think you have to play it, but once you play,
I don't know what the Anchornauts do. I've seen the Hammer Knights, and they are awesome.
Yeah, the Hammer Knights are awesome. The Anchornauts cost nothing, or not, like next to nothing. But what they do, they don't have any attack, but as an action, once per turn, you can just put a damage counter on somebody, put an exhaustion counter on the Anchornaut, and put a damage counter on a unit. And it's just
that's pretty good.
Yeah, that'd be good to clear off the.
Useful.
That would be handy actually against what you were doing to me, Shane.
Yeah,
you had tons of weak guys, right? You had tons of
Yeah.
weak guys, and I'm like, man, if I could just get rid of all those guys real quick.
And the bad thing that ticks people off too is that they kill them after you do it a bit. Everyone gets annoyed with the ping damage, and they kill them, and you use that to trigger the chant of revenge. And then all of a sudden, everyone's like, and then you can use a ceremonial die and bring them back because you can shuffle an ally back into your deck.
Yeah.
And then he comes back and he's like, oh, that goddamn Anchornaut. And if you have two of them out, that even makes it worse. I had a game where I got two. It was a good game. But yeah, Anchornaut is amazing. Much more than the Ironworker. But I agree with you. The Hammer Knight is amazing too. If you can keep that thing on the board, the Hammer Knight is amazing as well.
Yeah.
But you don't care if the Anchornaut dies. So he's pretty useful. So, all right. I think we have talked about a lot of board games.
Yes.
And I think we should wrap it up. Thank you for listening to us. Excited to talk about the games we play. We will probably pepper a future podcast with stuff from this session.
Yeah,
but,
I don't know, maybe just brainstorming here. We could maybe even do some mini episodes of the other ones because we didn't even talk about Blood Rage, which I would like to talk about.
Oh, that's true. Vikings.
Which is the theme of this episode.
Yeah, that's true. So before I do the outro, Matt, would you like to tell people where they can find our excellent content and send us feedback?
Yeah, as I said at the beginning of the episode, you can find us at notimetoplaytoday.com, or you can email at us at notimetoplaytoday@gmail.com. You can also see us at youtube.com/notimetoplaytoday, and you can also get us on iTunes, and you can subscribe to our podcast if you search No Time to Play Today.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. The fires burn and the singers sang as the ships drift out into the water. The remaining Vikings stare grimly, satisfied that their comrades are now in Valhalla, glory rewarded. They will sing their tales and ensure the saga of their peoples continue. But the sea calls and the ship needs mending. There is more glory out there. There is no time to play.